we're going to dive back in here, and this time we're going to build some light inside of this space. We have a nice pinky purple kind of light spreading around here right now, but we want to build some light that goes inside of our little houses here. So we need something that'll turn on the light when we get into our house. Now, if we just go right in here, we can see without any trouble, really. Everything's fine. If we go over here and we just grab a light, like particularly like a point light, we can set it inside and it'll give us a nice feeling in there. But the thing is that when we leave, we want to be very green, and we want this to turn off, right? So a couple things about lights. Out here in the editor, you can see that we have intensity, light color, attenuation radius. The intensity is measured in candles out in the editor, and you can really type in whatever you wanted here. So I'm going to put in 3000, and it just, man, it whites the whole thing out, right? But for this, I mean, I don't really want to go in and blind myself. I guess it might be kind of fun. We could try that. But the thing about this is now that we've put this light in here, it's just assuming we want to be a light. They don't really want it to be a blueprint or anything that's going to interact with us. So this isn't exactly what we want by itself. I'm going to go ahead and delete that out of here. I just selected it and hit delete. And we're going to make a little trigger light here. Okay, so I'm going to right click in our browser. Everything that we're going to make is pretty much going to be a blueprint class. A lot of times this is where we're going to be working. It's just right in here. There are other advanced things we can do, but most of the time we're going to be making a blueprint. Okay, now most of the time as well, especially as we're starting off, we're going to be building actors. Okay, so actors are our base class. That's like our kind of our parent class. Everything else is just a version of this with a little more added on to it. I believe we've talked about this before, where we brought the idea of vehicles in as a class, or especially just saying road vehicles. If you think about a road vehicle, a lot of those have very similar features. They have wheels, they have a body of some sort that you can stand or sit inside of, or straddle and ride, or like a skateboard, you stand on top of it. They usually have some kind of power source, whether it's you pushing pedals on a bicycle or a diesel engine in a semi-truck. They have some kind of power in there. So from there we can say, make a lot of different types of road vehicles, but we also know some basic things about what those road vehicles should have. So when we make an actor, we're going to get some basic things. Okay, so let's take a look at some of those basic things. This is our new blueprint right here. I'm going to call this trigger, or light with trigger. Okay, so what we see right now, this little sphere is called a default scene root. And a default scene root is just what you have representing this thing while you put it in the level. It's also the center of this actor. It's the center of everything that's going on. And since we're looking at this actor as the beginning of a class, looking at things, these are some of the features that come with every single actor that you have. They have an event graph, they'll have a construction script, the viewport, of course, where we're going to add things in. And then the pieces inside of it are going to have some basic functionality. So first thing we want to do is add in a point light. Okay, just type in point, and we're going to get what we need there. We have all the same functionalities outside, but you'll notice that the intensity is different. Inside the blueprint editor, it's actually showing it in lumens. That's what this is right here. Still have the light color. For us, I guess I will leave it as that, and I'm going to just crank this thing all the way up. We also have an attenuation radius, just like what we saw previously. It's a series of circles that represent that sphere and where the light should spread out to. So if I was to take this into the level now, I can see what this is going to look like inside of our house. Okay, so not too bad. The intensity doesn't seem bad. We'd have to adjust that by going back into the blueprint. We can't really do that outside here in the editor unless we code it to do that. We can actually make it give us that option outside in the editor, but we don't necessarily need that. Let's go ahead and go back into our light with trigger here. We have our point light right here. Everything looks pretty good as far as that's concerned. and we're going to need something to actually say, hey, you've walked into this area. We need something to collide with, basically. We need something to trigger. So if we think about what we want to do, we can often find what we need. In this case, I'm going to be looking for a collision. I'm going to look for something to collide with. Now, we can have a sphere collision or a capsule collision or a box collision. These are the basics that we have here. We can also have complex collisions, which we might use on like a character or something like that, especially in a fighting game. If you want to make sure that you're going to hit a certain part of the body, you're going to have lots of possibly capsule collisions, maybe some sphere and box collisions as well, just all being used at the same time together. Okay, but in this case we probably just need one, and since a sphere collider is going to mimic this attenuation radius, you'd think that might be a good idea, but really we want this thing to turn on when we walk into the house, and we don't want it to go outside of the house. So to match the space that we're going to be in, since it's a box, we should probably use a box collision. All right, so we're going to go ahead and put that in. I'm even going to rename this trigger so we know for sure that's what that's doing. I'll hit compile, and let's go over here to the event graph. Now, the event graph is where most of our coding is going to be done. We are always going to get these 3 nodes whenever we go into the event graph. The event begin play, this is something that happens as soon as the game starts. Okay, so we don't really want that to turn on as soon as the game starts. So we're going to get rid of it. As far as the event actor begin overlap, it's not quite what we want, because we want that to trigger whenever we only run into the trigger, not necessarily just when we run into the actor. So we'll get rid of that. Now the event tick is also something that fires off every frame that the game runs through. So with the event tick, we don't really need that either, because for right now we just want it to happen. We want it to check whenever we collide with the trigger. Okay, so what we're going to do is highlight the trigger, because we're going to use a node menu right here. All these actions are also going to bring up nodes for us. I'll show you what we mean with that. And we have the option to have it as context sensitive. That means it's going to look for things specific to the thing we've highlighted over here in our components list. So with trigger highlighted, we're going to type in begin overlap, and we get our trigger right here, add-on component begin overlap. And what that means is as soon as somebody walks into that area where the trigger is, we want it to do something. Okay, so this is the execution pin. This is whenever this is active and says, hey, this thing is happening. The thing you said you wanted to happen, it's happening. So what do you want to do? So that's where this execution pin comes in. Well, what we want to do is we want to turn on the light. Okay, so to do that, we have a couple different things we can do. Let's go ahead and zoom in here. The F key works as well in this space as it does out in the editor. So if you zoomed out too far, you can kind of click on one of these things and hit F over here, and it'll take you right to it. On the light itself, you can change the intensity down to 0, and that would effectively turn it off. And then if you wanted to turn it back on, just put it right back to this value of 100,000. Now the other thing you can do is go here to visible under rendering, and you can uncheck that. Now if I go back out here and I go to my map, you'll see that the light is off. If I go back in and I click visible again, I'm going to compile it, the light is back on. So that's basically what we're going to do with the code, is we're going to uncheck and check that box. Okay, but initially we want this thing to be off, so that whenever we go into that trigger area, we turn it on instead of turning it off. Okay, so the trigger area is kind of set where we would like it to be, but I want it to fill up the shape of that house. So what I want to do is go ahead and expand it out. There we go. And I know the light, I think it might be in the middle of the room, but I'm going to go ahead and keep expanding it out. And I'm also going to pick it up a little bit. All right, let's see what this looks like now. If you want to look and see what the trigger area is inside of your space, you want to go into this same space where the rendering is, and where you have it visible. Right now it's visible in the editor. This is where we're working right now in the editor. And in the game, it's going to hide it. But if you uncheck that, that's going to show that trigger area to us in the game. So now you can decide where it should be. And let's see, I think I want it, actually want the trigger area. It doesn't have to be just in the middle like that. I'm actually going to take it and move it off to the side. I want it to be closer to the door, so that when we walk in and we get into that space, let's see, did that come in the way I wanted it to? Not exactly, but that's okay, because I can just rotate it. Okay, there we go. That looks like more what I'm wanting. So as soon as you step in, that light should turn on. Okay, at least from the way we have this trigger set up. Now we actually got to wire it up. Okay, so we're going to drag off of this, and we're going to say set visibility. Okay, now it thinks we're looking for something with the trigger, and I mean we're not. We want to turn on the light. We don't want to turn on the trigger. But down here you can see, since we had these in the menu, it knows we want the point light. Now I should go in here, highlight point trigger, then drag off of this, set visibility, and you know we'll get our point light. Okay, I did put in a reference to the point light, and we also want to make sure that the thing it does is we turn it on. So we're going to check this to say we want the visibility to be true. We want it to turn on the light. So if that's checked, that means that light's going to turn on. Let's hit compile, hit play, and let's walk into our house here and see what we get. Okay, I think this is where the light is. We're going to find out real quick. Bam! Ah, there we go. Now when we walk in, it does turn on, but it doesn't turn off. So let's figure out how we can do that. If there's an begin overlap, I bet you're already thinking way ahead of me here. There's an end overlap, right? So let's go in here and let's do end overlap. Now I think I'm already making a mistake because I did not select the trigger, you know, and I'm going to have to select the trigger and go back in here and do end overlap. Okay, I am typing with one hand because that's just what it is. Let's see. There we go. There's our trigger and overlap. All right, now this reference right here, this is a reference to the point light, and that's what we're targeting. So just like up here, we want to do a set visibility. Now, the way I'm going to get this to move over is I'm going to highlight this and hit Control W. That will copy and paste that particular node right back into the event graph, so I don't have to go search for it again, since I know I'm going to use it again. And it's already still checked because that's what I copied. And in this case, I want it to be unchecked. I don't want the visibility to be true. I want it to be false, so it turns off. So now, if I walk into that space, and let's see, I'm going to walk over here, and it's off. I walk in, the light turns on. I walk out, the light turns off. I walk in, the light turns on. I walk out, the light turns off. I walk in. Well, you're getting the point, right? And the cool thing is, whoop, that collider is a collider, right? So some things that should go through it aren't. In this case, the projectiles. Okay. Now I want you to find on the collider where it might be blocking those projectiles. It's just a little mastery thing for you. But I can walk in just fine, but my projectiles aren't. Okay, not a big deal necessarily, but something you're going to want to look at later, and we all are going to look at that, but it'd be good to be ahead of the game. So we've built our light, we've done our first little bit of code right here, and now you can start playing a little bit more. Check your assignment, see when your due dates are, and what kind of mastery work you have to do to finish this off. All right, let's see what you make.